Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real with Najeh Wilk. Hope everybody's having a great week. We're going to get into a lot of things today. Fortunately, I was going to have two guests on, but they got kind of busy. It's summertime. A lot of people are taking vacations, so all good there. But we're going to have on Milton head coach Ben Reeves next Tuesday. Going to talk to him a little bit more in depth about his team and very talented roster. So he'll be on our show, Underrated and Overlooked podcast. So stay tuned for that. Will be a lot of fun. But today we're going to be talking about the Corker 707 tournament, which actually starts next week. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Starts next Tuesday. A bunch of players are going to be there. And then Wednesday is the players I had. So I'm just going to talk about my top 10 kind of players that I'm looking forward to seeing at the Corker 707 tournament. Some guys I think that are studs. Obviously, all are great players that's going to be in attendance. But these guys are names you need to know who are definitely going to make an impact. And then we'll get into, obviously, Tell of Tape. Talking about Tyron Harris and then Ali Beydoun. If I butchered your name, please forgive me. He's 2027 class. He's actually an out-of-state player, but he DM'd me on Twitter. He goes to Toledo Central Catholic. He will be a rising freshman, so we'll get into that as well. And then the latest in recruiting, right? Major commitments all week long. For players, we'll break down all those commitments and some potential major news for another player that's kind of starting to blow up in the recruiting world. And then conclude with my top 10 headlines for the weekend. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Talk about some of the top players to watch out for next Wednesday. And we will be streaming it. We'll be live on the Atlanta First News app, and also will be on NFHS Network. Okay? So, Kyle Vaca, number one. For me, again, he's the latest addition of the Kel offense. Certainly is going to make you play if you sleep on him. I really like his route running ability, his ability to get deep down the field, his great ability just to be able to separate from the defense, right? Be able to, go up and go catch the ball. He's good at the 50-50 balls, right? And I think he adds kind of that red zone target next season for Kel, right? Obviously, you got Peyton Zachary, who's going to be a great addition out there in the slot and can play the boundary in the X and the Y. But I think having Kyle Vaca in the red zone is going to pay dividends for that Kel offense to go along with Bryce Clavin as well. And then another standout is that he's not just good at running deep routes, but he's also good at short and intermediate as well. He's good at creating separation, right? And he was the star player, really, at his recent camp in Virginia, right? It was kind of tabbed as the best player there. So I think he's going to make a big difference for the Longhorns this season. I think he's up to 13 or 14 offers. I've seen him at the NIL Summit. The kid's gotten bigger. I think he's gotten better. And I think he will continue to kind of be that big playmaker next season for them. So I think he has Power 5, D1 potential, ACC, SEC, Big 12, Big 10, Pac 12. I think he has that kind of ability. He's really slept on. He's not talked about a lot, but as he said in his tweet, don't really care about rankings or recruiting, things like that. He's going to be him and do what he does. And I think he's going to be a player to definitely watch out for in the tournament. So he's been playing really well. He balled out in his spring game against Peachtree Ridge, and I think it'll be more of the same for him in this tournament. So that's a player to watch for. Kel Longhorns, wide receiver, Kyle Vaca. Watch out for him. And another one is going to be John Senius. He is now currently a 3-star, and he's going to be a big focal point for the Grayson offense as well next season, right? So their passing attack, they lost their leading receiver, Caden High, last year. He's going off to college. JoJo Stone transferred to Langston Hughes this past offseason and summer. Seniors last year, he had 450 yards receiving, and he had 3 touchdowns. So I expect Coach Bryant to kind of involve him a little bit more. I'm curious to see what steps forward he's taken as far as his career, going into the realm. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how good he is, and we're going to be able to get kind of that first glance, that first-hand look to see, how good he is and, what kind of things he's added to his game going into next season. So I think it'd be really interesting to see. The Rams have a lot of good weapons. They always have, but new regime, new realm with Centavius Bryant. And I think he's going to be a player to watch. He's currently a 3-star, has a bunch of offers lined up. And I think he's starting to get more exposure and notice for him as well. So that's another player I got. And then another receiver is going to be Cam Flowers, right? Plays for Warner Robins. He's a big focal point of the offense last season. He led his team in receiving yards, touchdowns. Flowers had a breakout game against Jenkins Savannah. In that game, he finished with 4 catches, 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I think he's going to be another weapon along with Rashawn Dinkins. I would have mentioned him, but, I really like to take the underrated look at some of the players. And Rashawn Dinkins is already, I believe, a 4-star for his position. So, obviously, he's a player to know as well. But I think Cam Flowers is going to be able to complement him well in the offense next season, and as well as in the Corky Kell 7-on-7 tournament. So Flowers, he's just another dynamic weapon on offense for Warner Robins. He can spread the defense, kind of keep them guessing. He can go over the middle of the field. He's not afraid to get hit. He's kind of that, another one of those red zone weapons you can use. And he's just a guy who's dynamic with the ball in his hands. And right now, big offers right now, East Carolina, Virginia, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, Central Michigan, UAB, and many, many more. So that's a name to know, a name I'm looking out for in this Corky Kell 7-on-7 tournament. And then at number 4, I got Tail Todd, right? Quarterback. On the next level, he might end up playing, a receiver or a running back or something like that. But Todd last year, he was Georgia High School Football Daily Player of the Year last season, a stud in every way imaginable. He's a true definition of a dual threat quarterback, right? Last year, he counted for 4,456 yards of total offense. Okay, that's not an error. Let me repeat that. 4,456 yards of total offense, right? 56 total touchdowns. Guy's a stud. He's not talked about enough. He's not ranked. He's just a guy that's going to get it done for you. And Craig mentioned in this show a couple shows ago just about some of the plays, right? Him seeing a breakdown in the defense, nothing being open downfield, but him kind of doing a scramble drill and being able to get down the field and create a big play and turn it into a touchdown, a rushing touchdown. So last year he completed 64% of his passes. He can run, he can throw it. The kid is a problem. The kid is a problem. And he's not talked about enough, as I said. He's a cornerstone of the Troop offense. And I expect next year him to be even better. I think Troop went pretty deep last season, if I'm not mistaken. I think they made probably the semifinal round, right? Against Norfolk Coney. Okay, yeah. So they made semifinal round against Norfolk Coney. So they had a pretty good year. And again, it's a guy I can't wait to see him in person. Like, we don't get to see players like him really, really often because he's all the way down in South Georgia. And obviously we try to get South Georgia on TV and things like that, but it's a player we haven't seen in person. So I can't wait to see him in person and see what he brings to the table. Then another quarterback, right? Not talked about enough. He is a 3-star player. He had a great Corky Kell debut, I thought, as a starter. He shared reps as a sophomore year. Last year was a junior. But I think as a guy, he's kind of, went down in some of the rankings with 0-3 and 2 for 7 Sports, right? I think they got him as like the top 100 player in some of the rankings. But I think Jeremy Helinski is just a guy that's really underrated, right? He shines brightest in the biggest moments, right? He shines brightest in the biggest games, right? And, again, Mill Creek won it all last year. And he had that Walton team right in the game, right? 420-plus yards passing, 4 touchdowns, right? He really just obliterated an elite defense. Like, we can't say that defense was not elite. Some of the things they did in the postseason, what they were able to do to the Milton offense, right? Slowing them down, right? Even though Carrollton was cooking, their offense kept scoring. They were able to get a couple turnovers, right, to kind of, separate themselves from Carrollton. So, for him to do that in his debut, I thought it was just huge for him. And the kid can flat out ball. He doesn't get enough credit for pulling off one of the big upsets in the past decade, right? Sending a nationally ranked team, Buford, home in the second round. First time since 1999. It's not talked about enough, right? You don't see things like that in the second round. For him to do that against a very stacked, very talented team on the road, this guy is really something special, and he's not talked about enough. Now, I know Walton struggled in the spring game, obviously against Roswell, but that's what it's for. It's a spring game, right? It's for you to kind of iron out the kinks, right? See where you're at. See what you're doing well, see what you're not doing well, seeing, what weaknesses you have, what strengths you have, and then just working on those, honing in on those things. So I really think, Walton's going to come out better from it. Coach Daniel Bruner does a good job with his group, and I think he's going to be able to have them ready to go and to be able to compete in battle because 7A is not going to be a cakewalk, right? So many good teams out there in 7A, and I think he's going to have them ready to go. So I want to see him again in person. I know he's been working on some things. He's gotten better, I think, in my opinion, and I think this kid is due for a 4,000-yard season and 40-plus touchdowns. That's the potential he has, right? Already committed to Wake Forest. But don't be surprised. Last year he threw for 3,500 yards. I think over 30-plus touchdowns. I'm going to go one up him, and I'm going to say 4,000-yard season and 40-plus touchdowns. So that is a name to know. All right. And then number 5, Jeremiah Curry, right? He's a linebacker / running back for Bluffton, South Carolina. They are going to be at the event. He has offers right now from, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Miami of Ohio, Coastal Carolina. He was third last year on his team with tackles. He's a first-team All-State for Bluffton, and he'd be a big part of their offense next season on both sides of the ball. And I kind of call him an Iron Man kind of a player. And when I say Iron Man, it's like he played both sides of the field. He never comes out of the game. He gives maximum effort, 100%. And his coach really raved about him as being one of the better players on their team, on his team. And I think, he's dynamic in the open field. Defensively, he's not afraid to lay a hit. So I'm curious to see, what impact he's going to have on his team. I think he's just a player to know. And I think he's going to continue to land more, D1 offers as the season progresses and the offseason goes on as well. And he competes at some of these camps and things like that. But he's a player to know. Pretty much what Coach Hayden Gregory told me, one of their best players. So I think that is somebody to know and somebody to watch out for also at the 7-on-7 tournament. Then number 6, Roderick McCreary. He won the Ironman Award last year from Georgia High School Football Daily, just being a force on both sides of the ball, right? Last year, rushed for 1,414 yards, 17 touchdowns. Defensively, he was third on the team in tackles with 83. Just a dynamic player in the backfield, right? He's not afraid to hit you on the other side of the ball. Coach Dixon talked a lot about him, what he expects from him this season. I think he's primed for another huge season. And I think he's going to be a focal point of the Indian offense, right? Coach Dixon said they're going to run the football, right? That's their identity. Even though they got a really good quarterback in Vincent Berry, that's their identity of Creekside, right, of Fairburn. They like to run the football. They like to do smash-mouth football. And he's a big part of that, right? Obviously, they got another guy, I think he's a rising junior, that kind of spells him a little bit, but that is what they're going to do. So he's one of those another great players you have to kind of drag off the field because he's not going to come off willingly. And right now, he's some big major offers, right? USF, that's South Florida, Old Dominion, Boston College, Florida State, Memphis, Eastern Kentucky, and many, many more. So Roger McCreary, another name to know. And Creekside got a major game coming up. They're playing some really good teams out of state, and they're going to actually take a trip to California, as I mentioned a couple months ago, to Mater Day and play one of the top programs in the country. So they're going to know a lot about themselves early, and he is a name to know for the Creekside Indians. So number 7 is going to be cornerback and wide receiver Elijah McDowell. Teammate recently just committed. I'm going to talk about a little bit about him a little bit later. And reveal his name as well. But the 2024 receiver has picked up offers from UConn, James Madison, Middle Tennessee State, Florida Atlantic, and the Miami of Ohio. So he plays for South Gwinnett. They're not talked about a lot, but I think they have a really talented group, right? I've mentioned A.J. Pickford. I've mentioned Elijah McDowell. They're going to have a new quarterback now going forward. I think their coach does a good job. I think this might be one of the more talented teams he's had in recent years. And I think you can see South Gwinnett make a little bit of a run. I expect them to make the playoffs this year. I think they have a really, really good team, a top 4 team that can compete, in my opinion. They have a lot of weapons, right? Last year, McDowell was second on the team in receiving yards for the Comets. Great ability, good being able to get in and out of breaks. He's a vertical threat, and he's a nice frame, right? He's 6'3 plus. He makes him a tough cover. He can take advantage of any mismatch of a smaller DB or smaller defender. So he's really good on one-on-one coverage, and, he can catch, obviously, the deep ball. He can catch the 50-50 ball. He can get, the low-end ball as well. So I think that's another player to know, Elijah McDowell for South Gwinnett. Expecting some big things from. And then number 8 for me is going to be Tommy Lafayette. Lafayette was a leading tailback for the Longhorns last season. Dealt with a lot of injuries, throughout the season, but he still led his team in rushing yards, right? Rushing yards, yards per attempt, yards per game, and he made several highlight reel plays, including a viral play when he trucked the defender at our Georgia Elite Classic All-Star game. So he's a guy that really kind of took my eye, and obviously Lambert was right there last season, right? They're playing, Milton's in their region, so that's tough. But I thought they played some really good football under Mark Beach. He was squatting 425 this past offseason. So he's building that strength in his legs. A guy that's underrated, and I think he will continue to have, a good offseason. I expect him to kind of, make his mark on Lambert. And I think he'll have if he stays healthy, I think he can have a 1,000-yard season. I'm not going to lie to you. I really think so. And he's a guy that's a bruiser, not afraid to take contact, and he's 2025 class. So he got plenty of time. He's just going to be a junior this year. So he has a bright future ahead of him. Not really known a lot by a lot of people, but a name to know. Definitely a name to know. So watch out for him. And then the last one is going to be Javarius George. He's from North Paulding. First team all-region last season and all-state. George was second on the team in receiving yards. He recently ran a 4.4 40-yard dash and was recently named wide receiver MVP at the MVP camps hosted by On3 Talent and fellow high school commentator Rusty Manziel, who does a bunch of different things. So George right now, he has offers from Alabama State, Tennessee Tech, Austin, PA, Middle Tennessee, Coastal Carolina, Mercer. So George is going to be a big focal point of their offense, right? Last year they had Boone Anderson. They had their really great running back. I think they're gonna they lose a couple of their receiving weapons next year, but he's going to be a focal point of their offense. So I think he's going to be a name to know. Um, last season he had 1,000 all-purpose yards. That's including in the return game, punt return game, running the ball, receiving, and all that. So 25 yards per catch and 115 yards per game. So again, name to know. I think he's going to have a really big tournament. I think he's a guy that can definitely make his impact. So watch out for him. I'm expecting big things from him and for him to have a really good season. The last one I wanted to do is going to be Nayland Scott. He's an athlete for Kennesaw Mountain. They graduated all of the playmakers, right? No Caden Lee anymore. Connor Lou off the offensive line is gone. But Scott really blew up in the recruiting world this offseason, and he's going to be a big part of their offensive firepower, right? Scott last year, only 4 touchdowns, but 270 all-purpose yards in a very, very limited role as a freshman, right? So he still was able to do that as a freshman next season. Imagine what he's going to do having more playing time under head coach Caleb Carmine. Great hands. Good route runner for the size that he possesses. Really great size and speed. It kind of makes him different. He's great kind of combo of both. Sometimes you'll see a guy that's really speedy and fast, but they're not really big with their size. I think it's a good combination of both. The ability to separate from defenders. Even if they have maybe some leverage on him, he can separate with his speed and his quickness, being able to get in and out of breaks as well. But he can also go up and get the ball as well. Very good, high pointing the football.